Okay, welcome to our Cinema 4D 101 tutorial. In this tutorial I will be teaching you the basics of Cinema 4D, you know, what the interface is, how to do stuff, and you will be creating the image you see on the screen as your final output. You know, I'm going to teach you about HDRIs, you know, how to manipulate stuff, primitives, you know, just basic stuff. But, you know, it'll give you an introduction of how the interface works, and maybe you'll even pick up some stuff that, you know, you might not know if you're more experienced. So let's get into it. Okay, this is the interface that you have as you start up. Basically, you know, it's all very easily draggable. You know, every piece of interface had these dotted lines which you can grab and you can move wherever you want. Now, if you want, you can have the viewport over here, and you can have this thing as your main piece. You know, you might like to work like that. You know, it's up to you. You know, put this in here, and you know, scroll it over and make it bigger. And you can work like that if you want. It's all absolutely customizable. You know, you can move this over here. It's great stuff. If you want to go back to the original, you go Window, Layout, and you go Reset Layout. And it gets bigger, then you just scale it down to fit back into your screen. Okay, now this button here, it maximizes your screen to, you know, to your real estate. It also can be done by pressing Control Tab. So you pick any option, anything you want, and it will maximize that specific window to your screen. You know, here I maximize materials. Here I can maximize basically anything you pick. You can maximize it. It's like a professional way of working, and then you access everything through the V menu. You know, without the toolbars, or you know, with shortcuts and so on and so forth. Very useful feature. Okay, quick interface tips. See these buttons here? They're generally big, and the more you work, the less you use them. The more you have them on shortcuts. So what I do is I go right click, icon size, medium, and here icon size and medium. And now for recording we have more room as well. Similarly, if you press the play button a lot, you can go icon size and it'll be large, you know. Maybe you'll prefer to work. If you're coming from Maya, I know they have really big buttons. Anyway, so back to small icons. Now, what our next step is? Well, okay, the top bar here basically includes your basic move commands. These are selection commands. You can click and hold, and also when you click and hold and something appears, if you use it a lot, you can just click this little button and it will appear as a separate draggable window, which you can, you know, keep anywhere you want. Or you can go and dock it to something, and you'll have it there. And you can change, for example, the rows and columns to 1, and ta-da, you have it there. If you like to, you can, you know, you can basically just, you know, it'll take up that much space. You know, you can put it in there if you want. You can put it up there. You can, I don't know, you can dock it wherever you can think of. You know, it's very, you know, convenient. And then if you have it screwed up, you just, and once again, icon size and medium. Okay, let's just make this big again. Now, with our scene, which is once again this one that we're working on. First, we're going to make some primitives, obviously, for the scene. We're going to go get from this menu here, which is primitives. You can also find it in objects, primitive, and then you can pick one. Just disconnect it, and you can, you know, tag it here as the other stuff. Then you can go make a cube, and then we can make a plane. Also, yeah, this is what you'll notice. You'll notice Cinema 4D has a floor object. It is located in here, under the lighting. It's called floor. Don't use the floor object. It's an infinite plane, which, you know, if you render it, it will go on forever. Which might seem like a good idea, but for the most part, it isn't. There's just... I personally stopped using it because of the old radiosity engine that you had. It always screwed up whenever you tried to render, because it made the rendering time a lot longer. And, you know, it's just don't use infinite floor. It's bad, okay? If you use it a lot, you'll find out why it's bad. And, you know, if you want, you can do that, or you can just listen to me and not use it. So instead, get a plane and just make it bigger. Just go click. By the way, when you change your tools, here you can go scale, move, rotate. You don't actually have to click on this thing to scale it. You just click into an empty place on the screen and you scale it. Also, when you go into 4 views, for example, in the move tool, let's select the cube. If you click and drag on an empty space in the top view, you move it in that plane, obviously. But if you want to move it up and down, and only in the y-axis, you could go here and you could select these the green arrow, here the green arrow, or you can just right click on the top view and click and drag, and it will move only in the y-axis. Similarly here, it'll move only in the z-axis. Basically, it'll move in, it'll move perpendicular to the viewport. If you right click and hold and drag, very useful feature. Now, you'll notice here right now our arrows, if I want to, for example, in a 3D viewport, if I want to move in the X and Z direction, I have to, it's kind of inconvenient because, you can't just slide it along the floor. So what you do is you go Shift V, which opens up these attributes here. These attributes are to do with the viewport, in this case the perspective. You can press Alt V, I think it's, and it will be settings for all your, Alt V for perspective, top, right and front settings, or you can just go and Shift V for just the perspective settings. Now what we're going to go is we're going to go to filter and we're going to go turn on axis bands. Now see these axis bands, you can't see them when there's a cube in the way, because, well, it's in the way. But if we go camera display lines, you'll see them, see there. And now you can, for example, just move it along the floor, or you can move it just along the Y and Z axes. Very useful thing. Display, back to garage shading. See, basically it's very convenient, to have axis bands enabled, sorry. Okay, now let's move it up so it's sitting on the floor. Let's go into our side view. By the way, to zoom in, for example, say right now if we move this off screen and we want to see the object, the S key will focus the object. The H key will focus everything in your scene. So see, S object, if we Control C, Control V and move it, we can focus on that object or this object. That's the general gist. S and H. H to frame all, S to frame selected objects. Cube. Okay. Good, so we've covered that. So let's go to this view here and let's press S. You just press S over the view and it will frame the cube. Now zoom out a bit and just make it sitting slightly above the floor, just ever so slightly. Now we're going to go to this cube settings. Now you'll notice this is a primitive right now. It's not actually a polygon object. It is still, if you go to the object tool, see here this is what I'll discuss next. This is how you move from object tool to point mode to polygon mode. But right now this is a primitive, so it doesn't have point mode or polygon mode. You can't actually select anything. So in the object tool, we can go Fillet Surface, and we will make this fillet very small, about say, 2 meters, maybe 1 meter, just very tiny, because we want it to be a sharp cube, but in real life nothing has absolutely perfect edges, so adding a fillet is a good idea. Now, see, it has these highlights, which are nice. Okay, let's quickly go over what these polygon things do. Now, let's turn off fillet, because right now it will screw up our points if we make it. We'll make it editable, and you'll notice now if we click on the cube, it first of all becomes a triangle. It's a polygon object now. It doesn't have any of those settings in any of these bars. It doesn't have fillet or anything, because now it is a polygon object. It doesn't have mathematical, primitive, what's it called, procedural settings. Like that cube that we saw before, it had procedural settings. That means you can change the fillet, the width, the height, and so on and so forth with numbers. So it doesn't record the position of each point, but it records the mathematical position of the planes and stuff, and then it transfers it to where the points should be. So now we can go into point mode, and now you see we have points. We can click a point and we can drag it and we can move it. We can go to polygons. Similarly, we can, for example, pressing the R key for rotate, we can rotate it, or we can move it, or we can even scale it. By the way, to move quickly between these three tools here, the move, position, scale, rotate, is ERT. T for scale, R for rotate, E for move. If you want to go to the selection tool, which is this one, you just hit spacebar. And then you hit spacebar again, you hit spacebar to see selection, hit spacebar to go to move, hit spacebar again to go to selection tool. There's also another thing, if you want to, for example, select these 4 points here, you can go to the selection tool and select rectangle, or since we've dragged it out here, rectangle. Or while you're in the normal selection tool, if your mouse has more than the normal 3 buttons, if it has side buttons like back and forward buttons, you can click and hold the forward button, and it will, whatever tool you're in, it will let you drag a marquee selection. So you can select the objects you want. However, be careful in the selection tool. Cinema 4D has an option which is only select visible elements. So if I drag like this right now, and then I move, that point at the back will still stay because it's not visible, so it doesn't get selected. So in the settings of this tool, you go only select visible elements, and you untick it. And now when I select all the points and I move, oops, sorry, and I move by pressing the E key to go to, and I move. See, no points get left behind. So I usually keep this tool on only select visible elements, and this tool on, on this tool, the Marquee Selection, to select everything, so even if you can't see it, because when you click and drag you generally want a bunch of objects, and the spacebar tool, which I keep on the normal live selection where you paint what you want to select, I keep it only select visible so it doesn't accidentally select stuff behind what I'm selecting. And obviously edges as well, you have, you can select edges, you can move them, edge mode, like any other 3D program. Okay, now let's go back to making our cube a primitive. Control Z until we, there we go. We have a primitive cube with our fillet. Okay, or fillet, I don't know how to pronounce it. Anyway, we have fillet. Now, firstly, we're going to be rendering 16:9 as we saw in our image. See, 16:9. See these borders on the side? They're the borders which tell you what your final render will look like. So let's go to the render settings here. We can also press Ctrl B to access it. Close it, Ctrl B also opens it. And we'll go to output and we'll change this width to 1024 by 768. Which, if you note, whoops, sorry, that's square. Let's go to 1280 by 720. Now, once you've got here, you can lock the ratio. So if you want to render at the lower resolution, because if you hit render now, it will be 1280 by 720, which if your scene is complicated, will take a long time to render. So with the lock ratio, it means, see how the bars are thin now, so the whole thing is widescreen. With lock ratio, you can change this to like 54 pixels, and the proportions will still stay the same. So you can go 1024, for example, and it will automatically calculate what the height will be to keep the ratio, which is 16:9 in this case. Okay, so we've got that set up, so we know where our scene is. Okay, now we have the floor, we have the cube. Now the next step is we're going to be applying materials. Materials in Cinema 4D can generally be created here in the Materials tab. We'll go File, New Material, and there you go, you have a material. Easy. Or you can double click and you'll get a new material. Okay, now, once we select the material, see, I don't like having specular on by default, and I don't like the color being not perfectly white by default. So what I do is I make it white, I turn off the specular, and I go Mode, Edit, Set as Default. And it'll ask me if I want to set it, and I go yes. So now every time I make a new material, it will be white. It's just, I don't know, when I want to make something, for example, pink or, red, I don't like to have to move 3 sliders instead of 2. It's just, it's a productivity thing. So we're making a green cube, so let's go make it green. Maybe make it give it a bit of yellow. That's a nice color. Now we're going to add some reflection to it. The reflection. Now, right now, if we apply this to the cube, it will reflect everything around it. See, that's kind of the preview here. It looks like a perfect chrome ball. If we add additive, it will be a greenish chrome ball, but still look unrealistic. Real things have a reflection where when you look directly at it, like unless it's a mirror obviously, they're not very reflective, but if you look at a low angle, it will be a lot more reflective. You can see this obviously on pictures of stuff on a wooden table. Like if you have a polished wooden table, you'll see if you look straight down at it, you won't see a reflection. But if you put something on it and you look down from a low angle, like an angle like this, you will see the reflection in the wooden floor. In the wooden table. So how we simulate this in 3D is called Fresnel, or Fresnel. Well, it's written Fresnel, but people pronounce it Fresnel, whatever. Anyway, that's it here, under color, Fresnel. So what it does is it makes the front on, see in this cube, let's make it larger. Front on is no reflection, like right here, there's no reflection, and here it's high reflection. Now, what I like to do is I like to bring the brightness down. See right now, this is how you, by the way, modify reflection without the Fresnel. Let's clear this for a second. If we put right now we can change the brightness, we can make it less reflective, but it'll still be equally reflective over all parts of the surface. It'll be just as reflective here as it is here. So what we do is we turn on this Fresnel effect, and now we see the effect that we want. But it's still, first of all, I like things to still be a bit reflective front on, and it's too reflective on the edges right now. So what we do is we're going to tweak this down. You can't see the effect right now, it's just this brightness, it's gone down. But what we're going to do now is we're going to minimize the mix strength to make it more, you know, to cover. Like, see, if you put this to max and you put this to 0, it'll be just like it was, you know, without the effect without Fresnel with the Fresnel. So we're going to tune both of these down so that overall the reflection is low, but it's also exaggerated on the side. See, if we do that, it will be like no effect, but we do it down here so it reflects on the edges more than it does in the middle, but it still reflects on the middle. Like, it's not much, but it's very subtle, which is, you know, how I like to make my materials. Well, at least with, in this case, that's, so here if we have a look, it's reflective everywhere, but these edges are highlighted because they reflect more, because they're smooth and they reflect more than, you know, same here, same if you look on this guy. You will see there's reflection. There's more reflection here on the edge than there is in the when you're looking at it front on. It just makes it slightly more realistic. Okay, now we need to put a wooden floor under the cube. So we're going to go to Window and Content Browser. Content Browser Maxon, very useful. It has a bunch of materials. You can apply them to your object. So let's go down to Presets here. If you don't have it, you select Presets, Cinema 4D, Materials, and there's heaps of materials to look through, but I'm just going to go to the, I think it's the MISC folder. No, it's not the MISC folder. It is the, this is the old one, the one that came with Cinema 4D for ages. Where was it? I cannot find it. Okay, this is rather embarrassing. Maybe it was, maybe it's in the default folder. Nope. Materials, fabrics fit the floor. No, it's not it. Damn it. It seems to be absent. Okay, well, let's just go to wood, I guess, and, you know, I guess we'll use this one instead. I don't know where it went. It was always there. Bizarre. Anyway, so, oh wait, basic, there it is, that's what it's called. Basic, found it. Okay. By the way, I use this little slider here to scale up the icon so you can see what's going on. A lot of different textures, some better than others. Scroll down to wood. There we go. Now, what would our flow look like? Our flow looked like this. So it was this one, wood 3, and drag it into your material manager. Alternatively, you can drag it directly onto your plane, but that's, you know, for those who like it, who don't like it. It's up to you, however you do it. Now, this material has a texture in its color channel. It's not difficult, you just click this little button and you can select what image you want to be there. It's, you know, basic texture. So it's an image, it's not a procedural material. Yes. Okay, now that we've got the texture, we're going to select it. Right now, if we render, you'll notice that this texture is very blurry and stretched out. It's because it's stretched out across the area of the whole, you know, plane. So if we render it from here, it'll look kind of better. But close up, it looks like crap. So we're going to select it. We're going to go to projection. We're going to change it to cubic. See, now it's all smaller because we're going to select this here, use texture axis tool. And this cube is basically the projection on the texture. We could have also changed it to flat to have the same effect, but then we'd have to rotate this UV texture, this texture projection thing sideways. By the way, you can manipulate this thing the same way you manipulate anything else with the rotate, move tools, ERT to switch between them. So let's make it bigger, so it's not too small. I think this size is about right. It's, you know, it fits in great. Okay, we got the material right. Okay, now I like my wood to have a bit of reflection, so we go basic, we turn on the reflection. And once again, we do the same thing. We go effect, we go Fresnel, we lower the brightness of both of them down until it looks like you want it to look. Now we hit render, and look, we have reflection. See, by the way, what I mean, if we go up here and we render, you basically can't see the reflection of the cube in the floor. But if you go down here, see, reflection of cube and floor. That's what Fresnel does. You know, here. Should have probably done this and showed to you what it does, but, you know, before explaining it. But there you go. Now you have, you know, a reinforced idea. Now, obviously, if you look at it now, the lighting of it is pretty crummy. You know, it doesn't look anything like this at all. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a sunlight, which is an infinite light. Sorry, we're not infinite, yes. Sunlight is great if you know your, if you select sunlight, it has heaps of stuff like, latitude, longitude, the distance from the Earth, the time of day. If you know all that and you want to simulate real life sun, go ahead, use it. I personally like to have more control. I like to physically be able to rotate my sun to the right direction. So we get the infinite light, which basically means all the light rays are parallel, so you don't get any, shadow, aberrations or blow-ups. It all just, it's like a sunlight. Parallel lights fall down and cast a shadow. So we're going to rotate this. Now you see the yellow dot, that's the point, that's where it is. So if you go to the E tool, the blue arrow is the direction in which the sun is pointing. By the way, here if you rotate also, you can rotate tool, how it works. If you click inside this yellow circle and not on one of the axes, you rotate the circle, as a joystick kind of thing. However, if you click outside, you will rotate the object as if you are, it's like a steering wheel. You rotate and the object is stuck on an axis. So you, play around with it, you'll figure out how it works. Point is, different effect if you click outside or inside the circle. Okay, so let's get this lighting about right. I think about here is correct. Let's go render. Okay, let's turn on shadows so we can see. Go shadow, card, and render. Okay, not quite how we have it in our render. Let's match it up a bit more. Let's rotate it this way. I think a bit more rotation will help. That looks about right. Compare it. Yeah, it looks about right as far as lights go. Now, you will see the obvious problem right now is there's no light in this dark area. Like, see this dark area here? There's no light in it. The reason is because there's no light bouncing back. Right now, we have a direct light source. We have the light shining down and everything it hits directly illuminates. In this image, you see you have lots of light here and you still have light here, but there's less of it. And the shadow kind of fades out the more light hits it. Like out here, there'll be more light hitting than there is right under the cube. This is called global illumination. It simulates how real light works. Now, to enable global illumination, we have to go to the render settings. We have to go to Effect and Global Illumination. Now, if you just leave it as it is and you hit render, see right now black, that's basically the global illumination light calculations, and there is very little of it. The reason is because our environment is currently black. Like, all our background is black, which means it's not emitting any light at all. See, we have a different effect now. We have a bit more light on this green area because there's light bouncing off the floor and onto the cube, which makes it a bit more, but it's still kind of fake because usually you don't have objects in pure blackness. Usually you have light coming from an outside source. So what we do is we add a sky object. From this lighting tool, we go sky object. Now, also in this render settings, switch from IR still image to IR QMC still image. It just renders faster. I don't know the technical details. There's heaps of tutorials about this GI stuff. I haven't used. I don't use this too much because I'm a V-Ray user and I generally light everything, without GI. But that's a whole different subject. You have to learn how to do lighting and stuff. But GI makes it very quick to set up a nice render. And I used to use it heaps when I started out. Like, if you have a look on my DeviantArt gallery, just go VOZZZ, triple Z, you'll see heaps of my stuff, and all my early stuff is just really, just hit the GI button and render, and it looks sweet. So see, now we're waiting for it to render, and see, now it looks nice, because it's a bit blown out right now, because the sky is too white, but you can see how there's, light on the shadow falling and stuff. By the way, if you see how there's these little ridges, that's anti-aliasing. It's turned off right now. You go anti-aliasing here, and you go from geometry, you go to best, and it'll get rid of those lines. Now, right now also, if you'll notice, there's no reflection in these objects. I mean, they're reflecting stuff, but they're not reflecting, they're not like, see here, you can see there's like highlights in the floor and stuff, and there's highlights in his head, and even from here you can see it's not just, reflecting wood. That is called an HDRI map. An HDRI map is a image, high dynamic range image, which is captured by a photographer, which has like it's like I think 18 or 20 passes of exposures. I'm not quite sure what, but the point is it's a lot of exposures. Which, you know, if you're familiar with HDR images, it lets you see everything in dark and light, and it's a 32-bit image, so it lets 3D programs, you know, handle it well. So where do we get these HDR images? Well, there's heaps of them on the internet, but luckily for us, Cinema 4D actually comes shipped with them. So with one of them, I think, or a couple maybe. So we go to Window, we go back to our where is it? Sorry, mental blank. Content browser. I keep forgetting what it's called. I use the shortcut Shift F8 to open it. So here we go to our Cinema 4D folder. We go Materials, HDRI. Wow, there's a lot of them. Last time I checked there was one. Okay, well there you go. And now you can go ahead and pick an HDRI map and stick it on. Now, I personally use the Fuzzy probe, which I can't find in this list for some reason. Okay, well well, you can experiment with these, but I'm gonna go back to our advanced render, samples, example scene, HDRI, text, and there it is, called the Fuzzy. It's like, I think it's like the most popular free HDRI there is, like everyone uses it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a new material, and we're going to go here, we're gonna go to the color channel, and into the texture we're going to drag this Fuzzy probe. And now we're going to apply this to the sky. Now, if you come from any other application, you will think, well, wait, I put it in the color channel. I should have put it in the luminance channel, you know, basic luminance. It is true, but Cinema 4D, when you use a sky object, it reads the color channel as a luminance channel. So now, if we hit render, you can see, by the way, how nice it looks, because you can tell, you know, it's reflecting sky and stuff right now. I'm just pausing the thing so you don't have to sit and wait for it to render. Okay, so see, we're nearly finished. Now, once again, still kind of overblown, but now it's realistically overblown. So if we go to our, for example, our sunlight, and we just lower its intensity a bit, and we hit render again. See, now we have our render back, and we have a nice, you know, it's actually pretty close to what we're going for, you know, there it's maybe just a bit less bright or something, but it's just, you know, little tweaks that we will work on later, if need be, or I can work on them myself, just basically adjusting the brightness of the light. If you want to adjust the brightness of the sky, you can go here, go to your color. By the way, if you want to access a material without going into the material manager, just double click on it here, and it will open it. Go to the color channel, double click on this, and now you can tweak the HDR gamma. See how it makes it, you know, more exaggerated, and the exposure to affect, you know, stuff. Just play around with it. I'm not quite sure the technical settings behind it are. Basically, you play around with it until you get something you like. I like to usually exaggerate my sky and, you know, kind of tweak down the rest of it, because, well, I don't know, it just makes it for a nicer image, I think, because it gets highlights and stuff in your objects, like very strong highlights, like render right now. Okay, that obviously slightly over exaggerated there. Let's change this back to 1.8 and, you know, 0. Let's tweak the exposure down and render to see what happens. Okay, there we go. We're getting what we want. You know, this is getting very close to what I showed you. You know, just a bit of exposure reduction. You know, turn the HDR gamma down a bit. It's, you know, you get it there. It's a bit of tweaking, but you'll figure it out. It's a very intuitive process. There's no, well, I mean, there is maths behind it, but I don't use it. So anyway, we have our cube. Now, we want to put the little man on it, right? So, oh, by the way, sorry, I completely forgot. The viewport, you can navigate it with these buttons up here. I just assumed people using it, you will know. You can zoom in, you know, rotate with these buttons, or you can hold down the Alt key and mouse click 1 to rotate, like alternate mouse click to zoom, and scroll wheel click in to pan while holding the Alt key. Or you can just use the 1, 2, 3 key, 1 and click and drag to pan, 2 and click and drag to zoom, and 3 and click and drag to rotate. Sorry, not mentioning that earlier. I hope you figured it out. But anyway, there's 3 ways to navigate there. There's Alt, 1, 2, 3, 4, and these buttons up here. There's something lingering in my mind. I think there's another way to navigate, some other button combination, but I don't remember it at the moment. Anyway, okay, let's add our man here. The man is going to be a primitive from the Cinema 4D selection. Once again, we go to cubes, primitives, we go figurine, and here it is. Let's get E, let's move him up here, let's zoom out a bit. Okay, right now if you look at this, it's a primitive. It's, you know, you can change its segments, you can make it high res, low res, up to you. You can change its height, which I think you can also do by dragging this button here. And I will make it about this big. Now, if you press C, which is make editable, which I did with the cube in the beginning if you remember, you can now actually select each of his separate objects and move them, you know. You can make him, oops, you can make him shake and stuff, you know, rotate. So this is how we're gonna do. We're gonna get his body, but we're gonna get both his feet. To select multiple objects, you hold the Shift key and click on them. Rotate them up. Get these two. Rotate them down. Maybe get this leg, move it out a bit. Okay, get his torso. By the way, when you rotate, holding the Alt key and stuff, it will rotate around whatever object you have selected. So if you have the cube selected, it will rotate with the cube as the center. If you have this object, it will rotate around him. See, it's very intuitive, like, you know, but the point is, when you have something in a weird place, like if you have, for example, this cube like out far away, and you're here and you're trying to rotate, see, it still rotates around the selected object. So if you're having retarded rotations, it is because you have something else selected. Okay, so let's place him sitting down. Let's go, let's pose him a bit, get his joints going here. I don't know, I'm not very good at posing stuff. I mean, I am, but just, you know, it's up to you, you know, however you want to pose, that's how you pose it, you know, you can make him a thinker if you want. Here, let's go. You know, make him slightly confused. Or tired, or trying to look sexy, I don't know. Whatever he's doing. It's, you know, use references. Anyway, so now if we hit render, there we go, we have a little man sitting on a box. If you want to apply material to him, you do it the same thing as the floor. You go Shift F8 to open your material manager, which is currently lagging loading because of this thing. Let's try it again. Shift F8. Come on, open up. Yep, there it is. Let's go to our Cinema 4D, materials, basic. And let's get a different type of wood, for example, I don't know, this wood here. Let's go turn on the reflection channel, reflection, texture, Fresnel, scroll on down, apply it to the figurine, hit render. And there you have it, you can see it rendering. It's basically, you know, the man's kind of small, but it's basically, there we go, we have, you know, what I promised I'd show you how to make. And you learn some useful stuff about Cinema 4D while you're at it. Yeah, well, okay, have fun, I'll see you in the next tutorial or something, you know. Post comments, tell me what you think, what you don't like, what you want more of. I'm going to probably make something about rigging soon, so yeah, look forward to that. Cheers.